And hello, people of the internet. How's it going today? How's everybody doing? This is Billy Bones. This is a walk through the mind. Thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in. A moment where we can sit down and take a couple minutes and share some ideas and hash out something and see if we can't share it with other people down the road. And so today, I'd like to talk about amateur astronomy. And there's a basic backstory on that. We just wrap it up in a nice little nutshell. And I like to think of myself as a jack of all trades, master of none. So I like to dabble in a whole bunch of different things. Lots of things to experience out in the world. And I'd like to share my experience of being an amateur astronomer. Now, to be an astronomer, to go outside and look at the stars, you can study the patterns, you can study the position of the stars, of the planets, you can look at the constellations, you can do all sorts of things just to get into becoming what is effectively considered an amateur astronomer. And there was a couple weeks ago where I had gotten home and it was a nice warm night, no clouds in the sky, and where I live I can see the stars on a regular basis. And granted, there's no clouds. But it's awesome. It's like when I come home late at night from work and the stars are out, I'll take a couple extra minutes and I'll just sit there and stare at them. Because it's beautiful. I can see so many stars. And even then, I know I can't see as many as probably someone in the middle of Montana can see. But I know I can see more than the people that live in big cities can see. And everybody doesn't need to stop and look at the stars. That's okay. But it's an awesome reminder of who we are and where we are. And it's beautiful. I don't know how else to describe that. But again, a couple weeks ago, I got home and I was sitting outside, and it's like, it's good enough night. I'm gonna go grab the binoculars. Being an amateur astronomer, you don't always have to have a telescope. You can sometimes get by with just a pair of binoculars. And I was sitting there and looking up at the sky, looking through the binoculars, and I see a little shooting star, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. That was so cool. Through the binoculars, you just looking randomly up in the sky. And as I'm pulling the binoculars away, it's just like, wow. It was something else. Because I didn't know if anything was supposed to be happening, and out of the corner of my eye, I see another shooting star. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. I get a cool show tonight. I'm fortunate that Mother Nature has offered me this. And right after I finished thinking that, out of the other corner of my eye, this third shooting star appears, but it's not a shooting star. Maybe it is, depending on how loosely you want to apply that definition. But that shooting star turned into a fireball. And I was able to watch something break up and disintegrate in the atmosphere. And that was mind-blowing. That was something else. That was really, really cool. And it's kind of the reason I wanted to do this topic, lighten it up from all the other things that I've been sharing. And maybe I can entice someone to go out and take a look at the stars and appreciate them. You don't have to appreciate them to the same level. You can appreciate them more. It's all personal perspective. But if you are looking at getting in, let me share some of my experiences again. And the products I'm about to bring up are not endorsed. No one endorses me. This is all me. And I can't give you a review on something that I have not used. I can only give you a review on something that I have used. But we'll start out letting you know that there's two types of telescopes. Generally speaking, you can get more specific and scientific, and that's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to share my thoughts. But you get two different types of telescopes. One is a refractor, and the other one is a reflector. The refractor is the telescope that I would assume that most people would identify and understand to be just a telescope. Just a long tube. Light passes in one end, and it goes straight through and passes into your eye. And that's how you're able to see everything. And that one's nice and basic. And it's used for seeing planets is the best use for that. It's advertised as a terrestrial or astrological telescope. So you can use it to look at stuff on land. Great distances. The other one, the reflector, is a wider tube, usually. It's a shorter tube, usually. And the light goes into it, bounces off of a mirror, and bounces off of another mirror before it gets into your eye. And that one can be kind of tricky to use because it turns the picture upside down. But it's more used for deeper space, looking at things. I have owned and do own one of each of these types of telescopes. The reflector, the short tube one that bounces between the mirrors, that was my first one. I bought, it's called the FirstScope by Celestron. And it's a tabletop one. It's got a little mount on it. It's got swivels, so you can take it outside and put it on a table. You can spin it around and you can look at stuff. And the first time that I used that one, took it outside and just pointed it into what I considered was a black spot in the sky. And looked through the tube, got it all focused. You wouldn't believe how many stars were in that little spot. And I started looking around. I found another little spot that had 3 faint little stars. And I zoomed it, I pointed it over there. And wow, again, just so many stars. You can't see with the naked eye. And that was just kind of mind-blowing. And you can look at the moon with it, and a really good shot of the moon. Little caveat for whenever you decide to look at the moon through a telescope, you'll want to invest in filters, color filters, specifically for the moon because of how bright it is. You're focusing a whole lot of light onto your eyeball. You don't want to wear sunglasses while looking at the moon. It seems kind of counterintuitive. But again, it's something else. The other telescope I have is the Astromaster70, and that one came with a tripod, which was a big incentive for me because I don't have a really level yard. So dealing with that first one, that tabletop reflector, got kind of tedious. It did its job. It did its job really well for the price point. Really cheap on that one. The Astromaster is a little bit more expensive, but again, for getting into amateur astrology, or astronomy, excuse me. Getting into it, it's plenty fair priced. And like I said, it came with a tripod, and the first night that I set up the refractor, not the mirror one, the refractor, which is what the Astromaster is, Jupiter was out. And looked through that lens, got it focused, and you could see 4 of Jupiter's moons. Talk about mind-blowing. Holy cow. It was something else. And the reason I knew, and it was personal experience, the reason I knew it was 4 moons is I could see, when looking through a telescope, planets are reflecting the sunlight. So it's all white light. So it just looks like a white ball. I'm told, I have not yet experienced, but I'm told that if I get color filters, I would be able to make out lines and similar things. And so this white ball is what I'm looking at. And you could see 3 other pinheads of light. You had this one ball of light right in the middle of the lens, and then these 3 pinheads outside of the ball. I know I'm repeating myself. I want to make sure I can paint this picture properly for you. And then in the center of this white ball, you could see a 4th pinhead light. And it looked exactly like the other 3, which were outside of this white ball, and this one little one reflecting inside this white ball. And that's something that told me that is a different entity, a different piece of matter sitting in front of this white ball. And I was just astonished, amazed. It was like the telescope has already paid for itself, is how I felt. And since then I've used it. I've used it a whole bunch more. I've seen Jupiter again, and you can see the 4 moons at different stages whenever it's visible, and you take the telescope out. It's something else. It's really something else. And if you don't have a telescope, cheap pair of binoculars. That night that that I saw the shooting stars, like I said, I brought out my binoculars, and they're not dirt cheap, but they're not expensive. I got them at a garage sale, and they're 7x35s, so they're not super powerful. But when you're looking through a pair of binoculars, I found it easier to close one eye and look through it, and you could see a lot more. You could see a handful more stars than you could with the naked eye. Yeah. I should have thrown this in earlier, but the one thing I've been told, and especially for the reflectors, going with the mirrors, the big tubes, is to consider them a light bucket. All telescopes you should consider a light bucket, because the light is reflecting off of something, and the more light you can get focused onto your eye, the more that you can see. And that's just the nature of things. So the bigger the initial lens, the more that you, again, I'm sorry for repeating myself, the more that you can see. So you get some big lenses on your binoculars, or a big lens on your telescope, or a big lens on the reflector telescope. And again, the more you can see. And there's all sorts of other little calculations. And I'm going to have to send you down the road on your own research on that one. Because there's something to it. There's a lot to it. But it's totally worth it to get out there and at least check out the stars every now and again. Look at the moon. Remember the moon. And if you're going to go out and buy a telescope, the piece of advice that I've taken with me is you don't want to spend so much on a telescope. You can read up all you want. You can find all the best reviews, the strongest reviews, and if you get this $500 telescope, you can see this. But if you spend $700, you can see that. I don't have $500 or $700 to look at fancy stuff. It'd be fun. I don't have that kind of money. It was kind of hard enough to justify purchasing the refractor telescope, the Astromaster, because I didn't know how much I was going to use it. The telescope isn't worth much if you're just going to keep it stored away. But you don't want it out all the time. You don't want it to get broken. But as long as you use the telescope every now and again, as long as you justify the purchase, and at least that's how I run the show. I run my show. As long as I use it every now and again, I don't have to use it every night, but it's fun. It's fun to take the telescope out and look at it. And with either telescope that you purchase, you will be purchasing additional lenses, so that's an additional cost that you'll want to consider. But that's how you're able to zoom, for lack of a better term, zoom into the picture that you're looking at. So hopefully this was kind of a fun deal. Hopefully it sparked an idea at least. Just something fun. Sharing a hobby. Sharing two hobbies at the same time with this one. Again, I'm Billy Bones. BILLYBON3S. That's the number 3 instead of an E. I got a website, billybones.com. Come check it out. There's a podcast link, RSS link. You've got the a means to contact me through mail. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at Billy Bones. But if you got any questions, comments, love mail, hate mail, send it all. I love you guys. See you next time.